I drove 6 hours from Chicago to my father's house in Springfield, clutching the printed boarding passes for our family vacation to Europe. $37,000. That's what I'd spent on flights, hotels, and experiences for all 6 of us. I wanted to surprise everyone by arriving early for our departure day, maybe grab breakfast together before heading to the airport. But when I pulled into the empty driveway, something felt wrong. The house was dark. No suitcases by the door. No excited chatter about our adventure. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor, walked over with a puzzled expression. "Oh, honey, they left for their trip last week," she said gently. My stomach dropped. When I called my father, his response shattered me completely. That smirk in his voice was unmistakable as he said, "We already went last week. Only for family." Standing there in that empty driveway, my phone still warm from that devastating call, memories crashed over me like a brutal wave. 5 years. 5 long years of being the family bank account, always hoping this next payment would finally earn me a seat at their table. It started right after I landed my software engineering job at a tech company in downtown Chicago. Fresh out of college, 27 years old, and suddenly making more money than I'd ever imagined. My father, Thomas, remarried Linda when I was 15, 3 years after my biological mother died from cancer. Back then, he promised me that Linda and her 2 kids, Sarah and Jake, would become my real family. "We're all in this together now, son," he'd said, ruffling my hair the way he used to when I was little. But somehow I always remained on the outside looking in. The financial requests began small. Linda needed help with a car repair, $400. Then Sarah wanted money for her senior prom dress, $300. Jake needed new football equipment for his high school team, $600. Each time I handed over the cash, gladly, desperately hoping it would buy me the acceptance I craved. Then the amounts grew larger. Linda's medical scare 2 years ago led to surgery that insurance didn't fully cover. I wrote a check for $42,000 without hesitation. "You're saving our family," Thomas had said, tears in his eyes. "This is what real sons do." Those words echoed in my mind for months. Sarah's wedding last spring was next. $28,000 for the venue, catering, and flowers. "I want you to walk me down the aisle too," she'd said sweetly. "You're like a real big brother to me." But when the day came, she chose Jake instead, saying it felt more natural since they grew up together. Jake's college tuition hit me hardest of all. $65,000 over 2 years for his engineering degree at Northwestern. "He's following in your footsteps," Linda gushed. "You're such an inspiration to him." Yet Jake barely acknowledged my existence at family gatherings, spending most of his time on his phone or making jokes I wasn't included in. Between these major expenses came countless smaller ones. Linda's spa retreats for her anxiety, Thomas's golf club membership fees, Sarah's down payment assistance for her first apartment, Jake's spring break trips with his fraternity brothers, always accompanied by promises that I was part of the family and that they appreciated everything I did. The European vacation was supposed to be different. My idea, my gift to all of us. 3 weeks touring London, Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. I'd researched every hotel, planned every excursion, booked every restaurant reservation. This would be our bonding experience, our chance to create memories together as a real family unit. I'd presented the idea at Easter dinner 3 months ago. "I want to do something special for all of us," I'd announced, sliding the printed itinerary across Linda's dining room table. "A celebration of our family." Everyone's eyes lit up. Sarah squealed with excitement. Jake actually looked up from his phone. Thomas clapped me on the back. "This is incredible, son. You're incredibly generous." "When do we leave?" Linda had asked already, scrolling through the hotel photos on her tablet. "July 15th, I'd replied. "I've already requested time off work. We'll have the best 3 weeks of our lives. But now, standing in this empty driveway with Mrs. Patterson's sympathetic eyes watching me, I realized the horrible truth. They'd taken my gift and excluded the giver. My phone buzzed. A notification from Sarah's Instagram account. My hands trembled as I opened the app and saw the image that would haunt me forever. All 5 of them beaming in front of the Eiffel Tower. Thomas with his arm around Linda, Sarah and Jake making silly faces. The caption read, "Best family vacation ever. So grateful for this amazing trip. Love my family." Posted yesterday, the same day I was supposed to drive to their house for our departure. The comments below were even worse. Linda's sister, "You guys look so happy. Such a perfect family." Jake's girlfriend, "Wish I could have joined you." Sarah's best friend, "Your family trips are always amazing." I scrolled through dozens of photos. Them laughing over croissants in a Parisian cafe, touring the Colosseum in Rome, sipping wine in a Barcelona restaurant. Every image a knife through my heart. Not one photo included an empty space where I should have been. Not one caption mentioned missing me. They'd seamlessly erased me from their adventure as if I'd never existed at all. My investment in this family had cost me more than money. It had cost me my dignity, my self-respect, and apparently my place at their table. My hands shook as I dialed Thomas's number again. This time I needed answers. Real answers, not dismissive smirks and casual cruelty. He picked up on the 4th ring, and I could hear laughter and clinking glasses in the background. They were probably at some expensive restaurant toasting their successful deception with my money. "What now, Freddie?" His voice carried the irritated tone of someone interrupted during a celebration. "I need you to explain this to me," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I paid for this trip. I planned every detail. I arranged my entire schedule around these dates. How could you leave without me? Look, we talked about it as a family, and honestly, you wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. You're always working, always stressed about deadlines and projects. We wanted to relax and have fun." The casual dismissal in his voice felt like a physical blow. "I specifically requested vacation time for this trip. I haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years because I've been working to pay for everyone else's needs." "That's your choice," Thomas replied coldly. "Nobody forced you to do any of that. Dad, this was supposed to be our family bonding experience. I spent $37,000 because I wanted us to create memories together." I heard Linda's voice in the background. "Tell him he's being too serious about this. It's just a trip." "Did you hear that?" Thomas asked. "Linda thinks you're overreacting, and honestly, so do I. You always get weird about these things." "Weird about what things about being excluded from family events that I pay for? Can you hold on a second?" The phone went quiet, except for muffled voices. I strained to listen, catching fragments of their conversation. "Just get him off the phone," I heard Linda say. "He's ruining our last night in Barcelona. Tell him we'll make it up to him somehow." Sarah's voice chimed in. When Thomas returned to the line, his patience had clearly expired. "Listen, Freddie, we're trying to enjoy our last evening here. We'll talk about this when we get home." "Put Sarah on the phone," I demanded. "I want to hear directly from her why she thought this was acceptable." "Sarah doesn't want to talk to you right now. You're being dramatic." "Put her on the phone, Thomas, now." I heard Thomas sigh heavily, followed by rustling sounds and whispered conversations. Finally, Sarah's voice came through, but it lacked any of the warmth I'd grown accustomed to. "Hi, Freddie," she said flatly. "Sarah, I need you to help me understand this. I planned this entire trip as a gift for our family. How could you go without me? Look, we had a family meeting about it, and we decided that this should be more of a bonding experience for the core family unit. You know, people who actually grew up together." Her words hit me like ice water. "The core family unit, I've been part of this family for 17 years. But not really, though. I mean, your dad's son from his first marriage. Linda is our mom. Jake and I are actual siblings. It's different. Different how I've paid for your wedding, Your brother's education, your mother's medical bills? How is that different? That was your choice, Freddie. We never asked you to be our personal ATM. The cruelty of her words left me speechless for a moment. In the background, I heard Jake's voice. Is he still whining about the trip? Tell him we upgraded to the presidential suite in Rome with the money we saved on his ticket. Sarah giggled. Jake says hi. You upgraded with money that was supposed to pay for my portion of the trip. Well, yeah, I mean, why waste it? We figured since you weren't coming, we might as well make the experience better for the people who were actually there. My voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Sarah, do you have any idea how much money I've spent on this family over the past 5 years? That's not really our problem, though, is it? You chose to spend that money. Nobody put a gun to your head. Thomas's voice returned to the phone. Freddie, you're being ridiculous about this. You'll get over it like you always do. We need to go now. Our dinner reservation is in 20 minutes. Wait, I'm not finished talking about this. Yes, you are. We're on vacation and you're ruining it with your attitude. We'll discuss this when we get home if you're still upset. The line went dead. I stood there in the growing darkness of that empty driveway, processing the conversation that had just destroyed any illusion I had about my place in this family. They hadn't just excluded me from the trip. They'd excluded me from their consideration entirely. I was a wallet with legs, nothing more. Mrs. Patterson approached cautiously. Honey, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. I looked at her kind, weathered face and felt tears beginning to form. I think I just realized that I never had a family at all. The drive back to Chicago passed in a haze of fury and heartbreak. By the time I reached my apartment, a grim determination had settled over me. I needed to know exactly how deep this betrayal went. I spread my financial documents across my kitchen table like a detective investigating a crime. Credit card statements, bank records, receipts, and canceled checks created a paper trail of my generosity and their exploitation. What I discovered made my stomach turn. The credit card I'd given them for emergencies only showed charges I'd never authorized. Linda had been using it for weekly spa treatments at an upscale resort an hour outside Springfield. $8,000 over the past 6 months for massages, facials, and wellness retreats to manage her stress. Jake's transactions were even more brazen. A $12,000 down payment on a brand new BMW appeared on my March statement. When I'd asked about his transportation situation, he'd claimed he was still driving the used Honda I'd helped him buy freshman year. Apparently, that was no longer good enough for his image. Sarah's charges revealed a shopping spree that would make a reality TV star blush. $9,000 at furniture stores, clothing boutiques, and electronics retailers. All charged to my account without a single phone call asking permission. But the most damaging discovery came when I checked my phone's text message backup. A folder I rarely opened contained message threads that had been accidentally synced from a shared family plan I'd stupidly agreed to pay for. The conversation between Sarah and Jake from 2 months ago made my blood boil. Sarah. OMG. Jake, did you see how much money Freddie transferred for Dad's property taxes? 15 grand, just like that. Jake, I know, right? It's like having our own personal bank. Dad's right, though. We should keep milking him until he gets smart. Sarah. Do you think he'll ever catch on? Jake. Doubtful. He's so desperate to be part of our family that he'd probably sell his kidney if we asked nicely. Remember when Mom called him pathetic for wanting to belong so badly? Sarah. Mom says we can probably get another $50,000 out of him before he realizes what's happening. She wants to redo the kitchen next spring. Jake. Should we feel bad about this? Sarah. Why, he makes good money, and it's not like we're forcing him to pay for stuff. If he's dumb enough to keep giving us money hoping we'll love him more, that's his problem. Jake. True. Besides, it's not like he's real family anyway. Dad only keeps him around because he's useful. The messages continued for weeks, detailing their plans to manipulate me for even larger sums. They'd nicknamed me ATM Freddy and had a running joke about my pathetic need for family approval. Linda had contributed her own messages to a separate thread with Thomas. Linda, I think we can get Freddie to pay for Sarah's honeymoon if we play it right. Just have to make him feel extra included in the wedding planning. Thomas. The boy has always been easy to manipulate. Lost his mother young, never got over wanting a family to accept him. We'd be stupid not to take advantage of it. Linda. Should we invite him to the Europe trip? Thomas. Hell no. That's for actual family only. But we'll let him pay for it and then make up some excuse why he can't come. By the time he figures it out, we'll already be gone. Linda, perfect. I've been looking forward to this trip for months. It'll be so much more relaxing without him there trying so hard to fit in. My hands trembled as I scrolled through months of these conversations. They'd been planning my exclusion from the very beginning, even as they smiled to my face and accepted my money. The final blow came in the form of a voice message that had been accidentally sent to my number instead of Sarah's. Jake's voice, drunk and careless. Hey, Sarah. I'm recording this because I'm too wasted to type, but I wanted to tell you what Dad said at dinner tonight. He thinks we should keep milking Freddie for at least another year or two. Mom agrees. She says he's so pathetic wanting to belong to us that we can probably squeeze him for whatever we need. Dad's planning to ask him to invest in that rental property deal next month. $50,000 minimum. Can you believe how stupid he is? Like, we literally call him ATM Freddy to his face sometimes and he just laughs like it's funny. Anyway, I'm gonna pass out now. See you tomorrow. I played the message 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. They weren't just using me financially. They were laughing about it, celebrating their ability to manipulate someone desperate for family connection. The rental property Jake mentioned triggered another memory. 3 weeks ago, Thomas had casually mentioned a great investment opportunity that we should discuss soon. I'd assumed it was another attempt to include me in family financial decisions. Now I realized it was just their next scheme to extract money from their personal ATM. I spent the rest of the night calculating the total damage. Over the past 5 years, I'd given this family nearly $200,000 in various forms. Money I could have used to buy my own house, start my own business, or build a real future for myself. Instead, I'd funded their luxurious lifestyle while they mocked me behind my back. As dawn broke over Chicago, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be ATM Freddy anymore. It was time for the family bank to close permanently. 2 months passed in blessed silence. No requests for money, no fake family invitations, no manipulative phone calls. I began to think they'd finally gotten the message and would leave me alone. I was wrong. Thomas called on a Tuesday morning in September while I was reviewing code at my office. His voice carried that familiar honey-sweet tone he used when he needed something expensive. "Pretty good to hear your voice, son. How's work treating you?" "What do you want, Thomas?" I kept my response cold and direct. "Now that's no way to greet your old man. Can't I just call to check on my boy?" "You can, but you won't. What's the emergency this time?" His chuckle sounded forced. "You know me too well. Listen, we've got a little situation with the rental property, and I was hoping you might be able to help us out." The rental property. Jake's drunken voicemail had mentioned this exact scenario. They were following their script perfectly. "What kind of situation?" I asked, curious to see how elaborate their lie would be. "Well, the tenants we had lined up fell through at the last minute. Real deadbeats, it turns out. They've been living there for 2 months without paying a dime in rent, and now they've disappeared completely. Left the place a mess, too." "That's unfortunate. What does this have to do with me?" "The mortgage payment is due next week, and with the lost rental income, we're short about $4,000. I hate to ask, but could you spot us just this once? We'll pay you back as soon as we get new tenants in there." I leaned back in my office chair, amazed by his audacity. "Let me get this straight. You want me to pay the mortgage on property that you own because your tenants didn't pay rent? It's not quite that simple, son. This is a family investment. We all benefit when the property appreciates in value." Interesting. I don't recall investing in any rental property. Well, not directly, but your family. What's good for the family is good for you, too. Before I could respond, I heard Linda's voice in the background, and Thomas put the phone on speaker. Freddie, honey, it's Linda. Her voice trembled with what sounded like genuine distress. I'm so sorry to bother you with this, but we're really in a bind here. The bank is threatening foreclosure if we don't make the payment by Friday. Foreclosure seems extreme for one missed payment. Well, we might have missed the last 2 payments as well, Thomas admitted reluctantly. But that's only because of the tenant situation. Sarah's voice joined the conversation. Uncle Freddie, I'm really worried about Mom and Dad losing the house. And if they lose it, where will little Emma and Tyler stay when they visit their grandparents? Sarah was playing the grandchildren card, referring to her 2 young kids. She'd never called me Uncle Freddie before in her life, but apparently desperate times called for creative relationship definitions. This sounds like a serious financial crisis, I observed. Have you considered selling the property? We can't sell it right now, Linda said quickly. The market's terrible and we'd lose money. But if we can just get through the next few months, everything will turn around. Jake's voice appeared from somewhere in the background. Tell him about the new tenants we have lined up, the ones with perfect credit scores. That's right. Thomas jumped on this thread. We've got a young professional couple very interested in signing a 2-year lease. They just need to finalize their job transfers and they'll be ready to move in next month. The lies were flowing so smoothly that I almost admired their coordination. Almost. You know what's funny about this whole situation? I said, letting a smile creep into my voice. What's that, son? I was just thinking about something Jake said a couple of months ago. Something about only for family. The line went quiet for several long seconds. Finally, Thomas cleared his throat. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Freddie. Oh, I think you remember. Something about a European vacation that was only for family. Family that apparently doesn't include the person who paid for it. Linda's voice became defensive. Now, Freddie, that was completely different. This is a real emergency. You're right, Linda. It is completely different. Back then, I was asking to be included in something I'd already paid for. Now you're asking me to pay for something I'm not included in. This isn't the same thing at all, Sarah protested. This is about helping family during a crisis. Family. I repeated, slowly tasting the word. That's an interesting concept. Tell me, Sarah, during your family meeting about the Europe trip, did anyone mention that the person paying for the vacation might want to attend? Another long silence. Look, we all said some things we didn't mean, Thomas finally offered. People get excited about vacations and don't think clearly, but this situation is about our financial survival. Your financial survival, I corrected. Let me ask you something, Dad. If I pay this $4,000, will I be invited to the next family gathering? Of course you will, son. You're always welcome. Will I be included in family photos? Absolutely. Will I stop being referred to as ATM Freddie Tobenaut? Disakwanon. The silence that followed was deafening. I don't know what you're talking about, Thomas said weakly. Sure you do. Just like you know about the unauthorized charges to my credit card, the property taxes I've been paying on a house that's not mine, and the rental property that somehow became my financial responsibility without my knowledge or consent. I heard frantic whispering in the background before Thomas returned to the phone. Freddie, I think there's been some miscommunication here. Maybe we should sit down face to face and work this out. Oh, I think we're communicating perfectly clearly right now. You need $4,000 for a rental property mortgage. You're calling the family ATM to make a withdrawal. Isn't that how this relationship works? Son, you're being unfair. We've never treated you like an ATM. I laughed out loud at that. You literally have me saved in your contacts as ATM Freddie. Jake told Sarah about it in a voicemail he accidentally sent to me. More frantic whispering followed by what sounded like a minor argument before Thomas came back on the line. Look, whatever problems we've had in the past, we can work through them. Right now, we need to focus on solving this rental property situation. Will you help us or not? I let the question hang in the air for a long moment, savoring the desperation I could hear creeping into his voice. You know what, Dad, I'm going to give you the same answer you gave me when I asked about the vacation I paid for. What's that supposed to mean? Only for family, remember. I hung up the phone and turned off my ringer. For the first time in years, I felt free. The satisfaction of hanging up on Thomas lasted exactly 12 minutes before my phone started buzzing with text messages, voicemails, and missed calls. They were panicking, and their desperation was showing. Linda, Freddie, please call us back. We can work this out. Sarah. Uncle Freddie, please don't let pride ruin our family relationship. Mom and Dad really need your help. Jake, dude, can we talk? I think there's been some misunderstandings. Thomas left a voicemail that started angry and ended pleading, Freddie, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this childish behavior needs to stop. We're family and family helps each other. Call me back immediately. But I wasn't interested in their panic. I was interested in justice. I drove to my cousin Marcus's law office during my lunch break. Marcus was my mother's nephew, a successful attorney who specialized in financial crimes and family law. We'd stayed close over the years, bonding over our shared memories of my mother and our mutual understanding of complicated family dynamics. Freddie. Marcus stood up from his desk with a genuine smile. What brings you to my legal lair? I spread my documentation across his conference table. Bank statements, credit card bills, text message printouts, voicemails transcribed to text, and a detailed timeline of financial transactions dating back 5 years. Marcus whistled low as he reviewed the evidence. This is extensive. Tell me what's been going on. I walked him through the entire story from my mother's death and Thomas's remarriage to the European vacation betrayal and this morning's rental property scam. Marcus took notes and asked clarifying questions, his expression growing more serious with each detail. Freddie, this isn't just family drama. This is criminal activity. They've committed credit card fraud, identity theft, and possibly tax fraud, depending on how they've been handling your financial contributions. Tax fraud? Have you been claiming any of these expenses as gifts on your tax returns? No, I assumed they were handling their own tax situations. Marcus pulled out his laptop and started typing. I'll need to verify this, but I suspect Thomas has been claiming you as a dependent for tax purposes, while also claiming these payments as business expenses or family support. It's a common scam that can result in serious penalties. He was right. 20 minutes of research revealed that Thomas had been filing fraudulent tax returns for 3 years, claiming me as a dependent, despite the fact that I lived independently and made more money than the rest of the family combined. The tax benefits he'd received totaled over $12,000 in false refunds. This gets better. Marcus continued scrolling through property records on his computer. Tell me about this rental property they want you to pay for. I explained Thomas's story about problem tenants and mortgage payments. Freddie, look at this. Marcus turned his laptop screen toward me. According to public records, this property is registered solely in your name. The mortgage application lists you as the primary borrower and owner. My jaw dropped. That's impossible. I never signed any mortgage documents. Someone did using your financial information and credit score. This is identity theft, plain and simple. But here's the interesting part. Since the property is legally in your name, you actually own it. And if they're living there without paying rent to you, they're essentially squatting in your house. The irony was beautiful. They'd committed fraud to put a property in my name thinking they could make me pay for it while they lived there rent-free. Instead, they'd accidentally given me ownership of their home. What are my options? I asked. Marcus grinned, and I saw a hint of the mischievous kid who used to help me prank our relatives at family reunions. Oh, you have several delicious options. We can file criminal charges for the credit card fraud and identity theft. We can report the tax fraud to the IRS. We can initiate eviction proceedings against your squatters, and we can sue them in civil court for the money they've stolen. All of that sounds expensive. Not really. The criminal charges don't cost you anything. The state handles prosecution. The IRS investigation is free and actually pays you a reward if they recover money. The eviction is straightforward since you have clear ownership. And the civil suit. Well, we'll structure it so they pay your legal fees when you win. I felt a strange calm settling over me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice. Let's do it all, I said. Marcus started making calls while I completed paperwork. Within 2 hours, we'd filed police reports for credit card fraud and identity theft, submitted documentation to the IRS regarding Thomas's fraudulent tax returns, and initiated formal eviction proceedings against my stepfamily. The eviction notice will be served tomorrow, Marcus explained as we finished the paperwork. They'll have 30 days to vacate the property. After that, sheriff's deputies will physically remove them and their belongings. What about the criminal charges? The credit card fraud is ironclad. They used your accounts without permission for personal expenses totaling over $40,000. That's a felony in Illinois. The identity theft charges related to the mortgage fraud add another layer of serious criminal liability. My phone buzzed with another call from Thomas. I showed the screen to Marcus. Answer it, he suggested. But keep it short, and remember that everything you say might be used in legal proceedings. I picked up the call. Hello, Thomas? Freddie, thank God. Listen, we need to talk about this rental property situation. The bank called and they're being very aggressive about the missed payments. I'm sure they are. It's difficult when people don't pay their mortgages on time. Right, exactly. So can we count on your help with the $4,000? I looked at Marcus, who was grinning and recording the conversation on his phone. Actually, Thomas, I've been thinking about our conversation this morning, and I've decided to take a more active role in this rental property situation. That's fantastic, son. I knew you'd come through for the family. Oh, I'm definitely coming through. In fact, I'm coming through so thoroughly that I've decided to personally handle all future rental management for the property. What does that mean exactly? It means that as the legal owner of the property, I'll be taking possession of it immediately. I've already filed eviction papers against the current occupants who have been living there without paying rent. The silence that followed was so complete that I wondered if the call had dropped. Freddie. Thomas finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. What are you talking about? I'm talking about taking control of my own property, Dad. The property that's been registered in my name without my knowledge or consent. The property I've been paying for while other people live in it for free. You can't do that. We live there. Not legally, you don't. Legally, you're squatters on my property. But don't worry, I'm giving you the full 30 days required by law to find somewhere else to live. The line exploded with voices as Thomas apparently put me on speaker and shared the news with Linda, Sarah, and Jake. I heard crying, shouting, and what sounded like furniture being thrown. We'll fight this in court, Thomas yelled into the phone. Good luck with that, I replied calmly. I'll see you there. Oh, and Dad, you might want to call a criminal defense attorney too. The police will probably want to talk to you about those credit card charges and the mortgage fraud. I hung up and turned to Marcus. How long do you think it will take to resolve all of this? The criminal cases could take months, but you'll start seeing results immediately. The eviction will be final in 30 days. The IRS moves quickly on clear-cut fraud cases like this, and the civil lawsuit should settle out of court once they realize how much evidence we have. As we shook hands outside his office, Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. Your mom would be proud of you for standing up for yourself like this. She always worried that you were too generous for your own good. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. The family bank wasn't just closed. It was about to foreclose on the people who had been robbing it blind. The next morning brought chaos to my stepfamily's world, and I had front-row seats to watch it unfold. The eviction notice was served at 8:30 a.m. by a sheriff's deputy who knocked on their door with official paperwork. According to the incident report Marcus obtained later, Linda answered the door in her bathrobe and immediately began screaming about mistakes and misunderstandings. The deputy calmly explained that she had 30 days to vacate the premises or face forcible removal by law enforcement. By 9 a.m., my phone started ringing. Thomas called first, his voice shaking with rage. Freddie, what the hell do you think you're doing? You can't just throw your family out on the street. I'm not throwing family out on the street. I replied calmly while sipping my morning coffee. I'm evicting people who have been illegally occupying my property without paying rent. This is our home. We've lived here for 2 years. In a house registered in my name purchased with money stolen from my credit cards while I unknowingly paid the mortgage payments. That's called fraud, Thomas. We never stole anything from you. Tell that to the police detective who called me an hour ago. Apparently, credit card fraud involving amounts over $10,000 gets priority attention from the Financial Crimes Unit. I could hear Linda crying in the background, wailing about how they were going to end up homeless. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd shown no concern about my emotional homelessness when they excluded me from the family I'd been financially supporting. Sarah called next, alternating between tears and fury. Freddie, how can you do this to us? Emma and Tyler are going to lose their grandparents' house. Their grandparents should have thought about that before they committed felony fraud. This is about revenge, isn't it? You're still upset about the stupid vacation. This isn't about revenge, Sarah. This is about consequences. Actions have results, and your family's actions have finally caught up with you. We can pay you back for everything. Just drop the charges and let us stay in the house. Pay me back with what money? The money you've been stealing from me. The money you don't have because you've been living beyond your means, using my credit. Jake's call came an hour later, and his approach was entirely different. Freddie, dude, I think we need to meet face to face and work this out man to man. There's nothing to work out, Jake. Everything is already in motion. Come on, man. We're family. Family doesn't do this to each other. You're right. Family doesn't exclude each other from vacations they paid for. Family doesn't steal credit card information. Family doesn't commit mortgage fraud. Family doesn't call each other ATM Freddy behind their back. Look, I was drunk when I left that voicemail. I didn't mean any of that stuff. Which part didn't you mean? The part where you called me pathetic for wanting family acceptance? The part where you bragged about milking me for money? Or the part where you said I wasn't real family anyway? The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Jake hung up without another word. But the real entertainment came when the IRS investigation kicked into high gear. Marcus called me that afternoon with an update that made me smile. The IRS auditor assigned to Thomas's case is apparently very thorough, Marcus reported. They're not just looking at the fraudulent dependent claims. They're examining all of his financial records for the past 5 years, including the rental property income he failed to report, and the gift tax implications of all the money you've been giving them. Gift tax implications. When you give someone more than $15,000 in a year, it triggers federal gift tax requirements. Thomas should have been reporting these transactions, but he wasn't. The penalties for unreported gift income can be substantial. That evening, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, Linda's sister, Janet, was on the line. Freddie, I hope you don't mind me calling. Linda gave me your number because she's too upset to talk. What can I do for you, Janet? I'm trying to understand what happened here. Linda is saying you've kicked them out of their house and had Thomas arrested. Thomas hasn't been arrested yet, but he probably will be. And I didn't kick them out of their house. I evicted them from my house that they were occupying illegally. I walked Janet through the entire situation, sharing details that Linda had apparently omitted from her tearful phone call. By the end of our conversation, Janet's tone had completely changed. My God, Freddie, I had no idea they were treating you this way. Linda always made it sound like you were just being generous because you loved the family so much. I was generous because I loved the family. They took advantage of that love and turned it into a business model. What can they do to fix this? At this point, nothing. The criminal charges are out of my hands. The state is prosecuting the fraud cases. The eviction is a legal matter between a property owner and illegal occupants. The only thing they can control is how they handle the consequences of their actions. 2 weeks later, Thomas was arrested at his workplace and charged with multiple counts of credit card fraud and identity theft. The local newspaper ran a small item about it in their police blotter section. Springfield man arrested for financial crimes against family member. Linda had a complete breakdown and was briefly hospitalized for what her doctor described as an anxiety-induced nervous episode. Sarah's husband, David, called me to ask if there was anything he could do to help resolve the situation. David, I appreciate the call, but this isn't something that can be resolved with a conversation. Your wife and her family committed serious crimes against me for years while pretending to love me. The legal system is handling it now. But surely there's some way to work this out privately. Sarah is worried about how this will affect the kids. Sarah should have worried about how her actions would affect her kids before she decided to commit fraud. Those consequences belong to her, not to me. The most surprising call came from Jake 3 weeks after the eviction notice was served. He was crying. Freddie, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about everything that happened and I realize how horrible we were to you. Okay. No, I mean really horrible. I've been talking to a therapist about it, and she helped me understand that what we did wasn't just mean, it was abusive. We emotionally abused you for years while stealing your money. I didn't respond immediately, curious to see where he was going with this. The thing is, I don't think any of us really understood how much you were hurting. We got so used to seeing you as this successful guy who could afford to help us that we stopped seeing you as a person with feelings. That's an interesting observation, Jake. I know this doesn't fix anything, and I know you probably hate me now, but I wanted you to know that I understand what we did was wrong, really wrong, and I'm sorry. It was the first genuine apology I'd received from any of them, and it came from the person I'd expected it from least. I appreciate you saying that, Jake. It means something. Do you think there's any way we could have a relationship again someday? Like a real relationship where I don't treat you like garbage? I thought about his question for a long time before answering. I think that depends entirely on whether you become the kind of person who deserves a relationship with me. After I hung up, I realized that Jake's apology had been the first step toward something I hadn't expected, the possibility of genuine healing. But that healing would have to wait until justice had been fully served. 6 months later, I sat in my lawyer's office reviewing the final settlement documents that would close this chapter of my life forever. The criminal cases had proceeded exactly as Marcus predicted. Thomas pleaded guilty to multiple counts of credit card fraud and identity theft in exchange for a reduced sentence of 18 months in minimum security prison and 5 years of probation. The plea deal required him to make full restitution for the money he'd stolen, which totaled $43,000 once interest and penalties were calculated. Linda pleaded guilty to lesser charges related to her use of my credit cards and received 2 years of probation plus community service. The stress of the legal proceedings had genuinely affected her health, and the judge took her medical condition into account during sentencing. The IRS investigation had been even more devastating for them financially. Thomas owed $12,000 in fraudulent tax refunds, plus penalties, and interest totaling another $8,000. The agency had also discovered unreported income from various sources, adding another $15,000 to his tax debt. But the most satisfying resolution involved the rental property. After the eviction was finalized, I'd sold the house for a substantial profit. The real estate market had improved significantly since Thomas had fraudulently purchased it in my name, and the sale netted me $68,000 after paying off the mortgage and legal fees. I used part of that money to establish a small scholarship fund at my old high school in memory of my mother. The rest went into investments that would secure my own financial future rather than funding someone else's fantasy lifestyle. Marcus slid the final papers across his desk. Everything's wrapped up, Freddie. The restitution payments are being handled through the court system so you don't have to deal with them directly. The tax liens against Thomas ensure that you'll receive every penny you're owed, even if it takes years. What about the civil lawsuit? Settled out of court last month. They agreed to pay an additional $25,000 in damages and legal fees, rather than risk a jury trial. Between the criminal restitution, the civil settlement, and the property sale, you've recovered more money than they originally stole. I signed the final documents and felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. So it's really over. The legal part is over. The personal part is up to you. Marcus was right. Over the past 6 months, I'd received several attempts at communication from my stepfamily. Most came through intermediaries like Janet or David, but a few had been direct. Sarah had written me a long letter acknowledging the pain they'd caused and expressing genuine remorse for her actions. She'd enclosed photos of Emma and Tyler with a note saying she wanted them to know their Uncle Freddie someday, but only if I was willing to be part of their lives again. Jake had continued seeing his therapist and had sent me updates on his progress every few weeks. He'd gotten a job at an engineering firm and was paying his own way for the first time in his adult life. His messages showed genuine growth and self-awareness that surprised me. Even Thomas had written from prison, though his letter was more focused on self-pity than genuine accountability. He'd asked for my forgiveness while simultaneously claiming that his actions had been motivated by desperation rather than greed. Linda's approach had been different. She'd asked Janet to invite me to family therapy sessions, where we could work through our conflicts with professional guidance. I'd declined, but the gesture suggested she understood that their behavior had been fundamentally wrong. The most meaningful communication had come from Jake's girlfriend, Ashley, whom I'd met briefly at family gatherings. She'd called to tell me how the legal consequences had affected Jake personally. "He talks about you all the time," she'd explained. "Not asking me to call you or anything like that, but processing what happened between you all. I think he really understands now how much he hurt you, and it's changed him. He's become someone I actually want to be with long-term." 3 weeks after the legal settlement was finalized, I made a decision that surprised even myself. I called Jake. Freddie?" His voice carried shock and hope in equal measure. "I got your latest letter," I said. "The one about your promotion at work." "Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were still reading them." "I read all of them, and I've been thinking about what you wrote about taking responsibility for your choices. I meant every word of that." "I believe you did. That's why I'm calling. I want to meet for coffee and talk about what a real relationship between us might look like." The silence that followed was filled with what sounded like Jake crying. "Are you serious?" he finally managed. "I'm serious about exploring the possibility. No guarantees, no instant forgiveness, but I'm willing to see if you've genuinely changed." We met the following Saturday at a coffee shop in downtown Springfield. Jake looked different. Older, more serious, less entitled. He'd lost weight and carried himself with less arrogance than I remembered. "Before we start talking about the future, I need to hear you acknowledge what really happened," I told him. "We used you," Jake said without hesitation. "We took advantage of your love for our family and turned it into a source of income. We excluded you from things you paid for, mocked you behind your back, and treated you like you were disposable. We were cruel, and there's no excuse for any of it." "Why did you do it?" Jake thought about his answer for a long time. "Honestly, because we could. You wanted family so badly that you'd put up with anything, and we exploited that weakness. It was easier than treating you with respect. Do you understand why that was wrong? I understand that it was abusive. My therapist helped me see that what we did to you was a form of financial and emotional abuse. We isolated you, manipulated you, and made you doubt your own worth." The conversation continued for 2 hours, covering years of hurt and misunderstanding. Jake didn't make excuses or try to minimize their actions. He owned everything completely. As we prepared to leave, Jake asked the question I'd been expecting. "Do you think Sarah and I could earn your forgiveness someday?" "I think Sarah already has based on her letter and her actions since this all started. You're on the right track, but forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something I choose to give when I'm ready." "What about Dad and Linda?" I considered his question carefully. "Your father's letter showed me that he still doesn't understand what he did wrong. He's sorry he got caught, not sorry he hurt me. Linda seems to understand better, but I'm not sure she's capable of the kind of change that would make a relationship possible." "That's fair. They've got a lot more work to do on themselves." 6 months later, Sarah and I began rebuilding our relationship slowly. She brought Emma and Tyler to visit me in Chicago, and we spent an afternoon at the Children's Museum. Watching her interact with her kids, I could see genuine changes in her character. She was teaching them about respect consequences and treating people with kindness. Jake and I developed an email correspondence that gradually grew into occasional phone calls and eventually regular meetings. He'd found his own identity outside of the family's toxic dynamics and was becoming someone I genuinely liked as a person. Thomas served his full 18-month sentence and returned to Springfield with minimal resources and limited job prospects. The financial restitution requirements would follow him for years, ensuring that he couldn't rebuild his lavish lifestyle quickly. We had no contact during this period, and I felt no desire to change that. Linda struggled with depression and anxiety following the legal proceedings, but according to Sarah, she was working with a therapist and taking responsibility for her actions. She'd asked through Sarah if I would be willing to receive a letter from her, but I wasn't ready for that level of communication yet. 2 years after the final legal settlement, I received an unexpected call from Thomas. His voice was humble in a way I'd never heard before. "Freddie, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to call and tell you something important." "What's that, Thomas?" "I've been going to counseling and a program for people who've committed financial crimes against family members. It's helped me understand that what I did to you wasn't just theft. It was betrayal of the worst kind. I betrayed the trust of someone who loved our family." I listened without interrupting, curious to see if he'd genuinely changed. "I know I can't undo the damage I caused, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong, and I'm working every day to become the kind of person who would never hurt someone who cared about our family." "What do you want from me, Thomas?" "Nothing. I don't want anything from you, son. I just wanted you to know that losing you made me realize what I'd thrown away. You were the best thing about our family, and I destroyed that because of greed and selfishness." It was the first conversation we'd had where Thomas didn't ask me for anything, and the first time he'd taken complete responsibility for his actions without making excuses. "I appreciate you saying that," I told him. "Do you think there's any chance that someday, maybe years from now, we might be able to have some kind of relationship again?" I thought about his question for a long time. "I think that depends entirely on whether you continue becoming the kind of person who deserves a relationship with me. Right now you're not there yet, but you're moving in the right direction. Today, 3 years after that devastating phone call in my father's driveway, I have a small but genuine family. Sarah and her children are regular parts of my life, and she's become the sister I always hoped she could be. Jake and I have developed a friendship built on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. Thomas and I exchange Christmas cards and brief updates through Sarah, but we haven't rebuilt a personal relationship yet. That may come with time, or it may not. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. Linda and I have no direct contact, but I've heard through the family that she speaks about me with regret and respect. That's enough for now. Most importantly, I've learned to value myself enough to demand authentic relationships. I no longer confuse generosity with love or mistake financial support for family connection. The people in my life now care about me as a person, not as an ATM. My mother would be proud of the man I've become and the family I've chosen to build. The family bank is permanently closed, but the family itself, rebuilt on honesty and respect, is stronger than ever. I'd like to ask you something. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where your generosity was being taken advantage of? How did you recognize the difference between people who loved you and people who loved what you could provide for them? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges and finding your own strength. And if you think someone else might benefit from hearing this message about the importance of setting boundaries with family, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve relationships built on genuine love and respect, not just what you can provide for others. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next